All right. ChatGPT and similar other AI chatbots and models are what we would call language learning models. They take the code that they were made with and all of the responses, all the prompts that are put into them, and it learns from that to try to give human-like responses. And a lot of people use this, to try to solve problems, write things out for them, research things, basically things that are very time consuming for us to do as humans, but technology can do very quickly. Data analysis as well is another one of those that gets used for a lot. Pretty much it can look at large sets and pick out just what it needs, where for a human that might take a long time. Anyways, I'm going to go through some of the positives and some of the negatives of AI usage in academics. So, first off, it helps out, maybe students that learn differently or have like some certain type of learning disabilities, maybe, and maybe the going into class it isn't clicking for them with the how the professor's teaching, and they could have the AI like write it out and do it maybe a step by step way that maybe the teacher wouldn't or wouldn't have time to do. Speaking of time, they're always available. Chatbots you can always talk to. It's technology. They don't need sleep. They don't need rest, and they're never busy. You can talk to them all the time. Professor might get busy, might not answer an email. You might have that gap, that lag in it to where you're waiting on a response from them and you really need to do something right then. They can also be highly personalized. So they go off the prompts that you say and they're only listening to what you say rather than a professor where they're teaching an entire class and they have to cater to all the students and they might not be able to personally cater to just one in the time that they're given for class. They also are extremely quick with their answer. As I mentioned before, you might have to wait on a response from a teacher, but with AI, you say it, it might sit there and tell you it's thinking for a second, but that's usually, especially if you've used it, you probably know is less than 10 seconds most of the time, maybe 30 seconds at the most. But that's so those are the positives. They're really good at making study guides and things like that. They're like I said, they can take a lot of information, put it into some points for you. Now, as for the negatives, students have become very over reliant on AI, and they have basically used it to complete their task maybe without thinking, to where they just, oh, I just want to get a grade. Let me just get it in. I'll get AI to do it real quick, and so it's taken away their critical thinking, and it's just doing the work for them. And then there's all the ethical concerns. Where is my data going when I put it into it? How is it being interpreted? Who's it being given to? Things like that. And also on the ethical parts of it, it's very environmentally not good. It uses a lot of our drinking water to cool it down. Data centers are being put up where there's generators running 24/7, putting out harmful fumes and things like that. Another thing would be less like personal interaction. So instead of asking a professor or a classmate, students have shifted over to asking, ChatGPT or something like that, which I think has had an impact on how people interact out in public and out in the world and whatever. I've heard people saying that, oh, younger people can't communicate like other people used to be able to. And I do think that AI plays a pretty good role in that. AI also is not very good, or it has a bad habit of forming biases. So because it reads data, if it sees a certain pattern, it's going to hold on to that pattern. It's going to, think that that's the truth, even though it might not be. And there are, basically it stereotypes and does things like that. Rather than, where humans would be like, oh, there's an exception to that. There's this, there's that, there's human judgment. They lack the judgment. So what I would recommend is I think that universities need to encourage their students to balance AI and their own thinking together, rather than just fully, relying on AI as a replacement for human thoughts, things like that. And they need to also emphasize that you need to be critically thinking because that's what we're all here to do is to learn, and to learn you have to think. Next, I think that they should train the faculty in basically in AI comprehension. So they need to know how it works and all that so that they can tell their students, here's how I would use it. Here's some things that you need to watch out for. Here's ways that it's good. Here's ways that it's bad, things like that. And, just teach the students how to use it properly. I think that there should be probably some mandatory classes, especially in younger levels before it gets up to college, so that kids know not to just fully replace what they're doing with AI. Lastly, I think that there should be some sort of way of studying or assessing how AI is being used. So, however that would be, maybe, you have them do a certain tests or whatever that might challenge their critical thinking. And or, I'm not fully sure how they would go about that, but there needs to be regularly scheduled checkups on this to see, hey, do we need more? Do we need less? Is it being used the right way? Is it being used the wrong way? Things like that. And like I said, interpret those results and act accordingly. But in conclusion, my key points would be our biggest problems is that people are replacing their thinking with it. I think that it's just encouraging people to think a whole lot less when you could go type it into a chat bot and it'll just spit it out to you right there. Um, that's probably my biggest point. That most anything I've ever talked about with AI, that's my point I come back to, is people trying to replace humans with that. It's called artificial for a reason. We have judgment, we have thinking, we have all that. Now, I do think that AI most definitely has a future in academia. It can help out in a lot of different ways. It really can. But we need to have some sort of way of checking it and just keeping it in order to where it's not going to take over the curriculum and all that and just be too much of it, if that's making sense. But yeah, pretty much that's what I got. Thank you for listening.